Brilliant. So welcome to day 5 of the Ellii Programme. We're looking forward to getting stuck into business models, giving people time to reflect on their products and services, what is business planning, and looking at financial stuff. The Ellii Programme that we run here is aimed at women working in the women's support sector in its broadest sense. So those of you on the programme, some of you are running traditional women's support organisations and providing all sorts of help for women in crisis, women in need, women at looking at their options and their next steps, through to women working with health and wellbeing businesses and organisations, theatres, women in comedy, women in enterprise. We've got a really broad mix. And as most of you know, because some of you will have met each other at different events, we've got people who are both at that kind of early stage startup and grassroots level right through to larger organisations. And we hope that mix of sort of peer support across different sides of the spectrum will really aid with learning and thinking and connection building. And coming up later in the programme, we've got these collaborative days coming up in March that we'll talk about later on today. However, first things first, is we're going to be getting into the different elements of the day. And just to recap, we're going to be helping you look at your products and services. Shelley's going to be walking you through that with some interactive tools and some breakouts. Take a break. We're calling it business model canvas, but I just find you need a range of business planning options in your tool bag, because what works for one doesn't work for another. And the point of that session at 11:30 is to demystify business planning and take the pain out of it, and make it practical and useful for you and for those that you need to share this stuff with. We've got a lunch break, and then we'll come back at 1:15, and Gurj Kang, who is somebody who's run sessions with us for a couple of years now, he's got a background in finance and accounting. He's worked in public, private and the voluntary sector, and for the last, good while, he's worked in the charity sector. So he really does understand what we do, and puts things across in plain English that makes sense, which is what we need, and is succinct and confidence boosting at the same time. It's a win-win. So we'll look forward to him this afternoon. And at the end of the day, just for those of you who've picked up on this and those of you who haven't, we will be having some one-to-ones. I think we've got time for about 9 one-to-ones if people want them. It's an offer. So Gurj, myself and Shelley have got some booking times that we'll come back to you at lunch about, where we can book people in for a 10-minute one-to-one to look at your specifics. Anyway, we'll come back to that, but it's just have that in the back of your mind. I know some people might have to leave early or the school runs, but if you're around between 2:30 and 3 and you might fancy a one-to-one, we can sort that out, and to look at your finances or to think about the planning for the future. So just before I hand over to Shelley, I was just recapping our ground rules, as some of you will know, and I'm conscious there's a few people who are just landing. It's everybody's sort of that scrabble to get in, so welcome if you've just arrived. I'm just keeping the agenda up there just for a second for anyone who's just coming through, so they don't land and think, what was I doing again? And yeah, that's fine. So then, in terms of that ground rules stuff, so when we all met back at the Frog and Bucket, and it's great to see Jess here on the call, who's from there. We've met in person and we looked at how we might work together to get the best out of the opportunity of working collaboratively and listening to each other and making the most of these sessions. We're conscious that as we've come onto Zoom and things go virtual, and just to check in with people really, I'm just flagging up our original ground rules so that people have got those in the back of their mind. And in theory, we're asking people to be as far as possible, be on time and as efficient as they can. Try and keep focused, particularly in these breakouts where we all know there's never enough time in these breakouts, and giving everybody the opportunity to contribute where they can and where they feel able. We absolutely try and mix up groups and get people working with people they haven't done before, because that was a request. And the whole point of these days is to give people a chance to space to think and grow, and that's not just mine and Shelley's responsibility. That's all of us to make the most of these days. We hope that people have come onto this programme to be challenged, to see things differently, learn from new perspectives, and we've certainly got a really diverse group of people, as always. And so trying to support one another to have those confident and brave conversations, particularly when we're talking about our own internal, our organisations. Information needs to remain sort of confidential, and we've been through these ground rules a number of times. I just wonder whether anybody's got anything that they wanted to flag up or anything they wanted to add. They can come off mute and say so, or they can make a note to me or Shelley privately. If there's ever anything on your mind where you think, oh, I had this experience, or I think this needs changing, or in order for me to get the best out of this programme, I need this. Let us know, and we'll accommodate as well we can internally. And if it's things that we need to discuss in the round as a group, absolutely happy to do so. And ultimately we're always, we had this phrase, I think it was Dawn that we had on one of our sessions, said, if we, we're going to have to agree to disagree at certain types of our conversation, and how we disagree well is really what makes the difference in a programme like this. So ultimately, a common thread for today is that we all want to be sustainable, and that's what today is really about. And so, making sure that our organisations are sustainable, planned well, know what's happening, and well organised and well financially managed is what's core today. Just flashing that agenda up one more time for anyone who's just joined us. I'm going to hand over to Shelley in a second to kickstart our first session. But before I do that, I just wonder, has anybody got any questions, any thoughts, anything you need? Feel free to come off mute, put anything in the chat. Otherwise, we'll start the sessions. And as I say, shortly there'll be lots of interactive sort of breakouts for people to connect and meet with others and start chatting. But we've got a few bits of theory coming up today, so we hope you'll bear with us on that. Lovely. I've got 2 minutes before I hand over to Shelley. One more thing we're squeezing in today. So Flourish Together have been asked by the Business Growth Hub. In fact, that's my first question for you. In the chat, would you, actually not in the chat, does everybody know how to use reactions? I'm wondering. I might ask for a reaction on this because it'd be easier than putting it in the chat. Is if you've ever heard of the Business Growth Hub, can you just put a hand up or a wave at me or a thumbs up? There are some thumbs there. If you've heard of the Business Growth Hub, pop a thumb up. And if you haven't, don't worry. I'll give people a minute to just think, have they ever heard of the Business Growth Hub? And if you haven't, don't worry, I'm going to mention who they are. But if you pop me a thumb up in the list, if you've ever heard of the Business Growth Hub, stick a thumb up. Or if you can't find your thumb on the stuff, pop it in the chat and just say, yes, I've heard of the Business Growth Hub. And we'll look at that. It looks like this. So I'm just looking. Great. So the Business Growth Hub provides support to businesses around Greater Manchester. They have the kind of large contracts to offer business planning, business support to all businesses, every sector, and they're the kind of main overarching infrastructure body that offers business support. Historically, they have supported the third sector, and there have been lots of social enterprises access their support, but they know that many of them don't come to them for various reasons, and they know that they're interested in finding out more about the support needs of people working in the third sector, particularly pre-starts and early stage for everybody. So what I've got on here, and what we've been doing is we've been holding all sorts of focus groups, and we've been doing interviews with people, and while we're running these programs, we're just seeking a little bit of feedback from the people on our various programs. So a quick ask from everybody on the call, if you're happy to do so, is in the chat. I would just ask you to list in the chat your top 5. If you're looking down this list, we've identified business planning, marketing and branding, legalities and setup, policies and procedures, HR and recruitment, financial management, income generation, social media and comms, impact measurement and strategic thinking are topics that we've got as a kind of core set. Now, obviously, we're running a lot of this through Flourish. This is kind of what we run for social enterprise support programs. But I'm just curious, and as are the Business Growth Hub, if you could list in the chat, and there might not be 5, but if you can think out of this list, if you could pick 5 of these workshops or things that you might go to, or you might think about going to because it's a priority for you right now, what would your top 5 be? And we're just interested to hear that. So pop that in the chat if you will, and we'll come and have a nosy, Shelley and I. What you will get after today is we are running, and I'll put the links, in fact, I'll do it in a second so it's all together. We are running a focus group on Friday, the 4th of February, and I'll put all this in the chat, and we're putting it out to the wider world. We've space for about 30 people. And if you've got a passion for wanting to tell business support organisations or social enterprise support organisations, you know, what you would like to see, or if you've had a positive or negative experience and how you'd want to see support offered in future, this is a great opportunity to feed into that. We're basically doing a review, culminating in a report in a few weeks' time that the Business Growth Hub will digest and think about how that might influence their service design going forward. And myself, Shelley, a woman called Nikki Dickens, who some of you might know, who's a brilliant social enterprise support consultant, and Adrian Ashton, another one. We're working together to absorb this learning and look at, you know, how we can help our colleagues across the CVS world, across different infrastructure support agencies, digest this as well. So it's your opportunity to feed in, basically. So thank you to those of you who put your top 5 off that list in the chat. My one last ask, as I hand over to Shelley, is, as you're looking at that list and you think, well, I actually really need this and it's missing, something that if you could put one extra thing in the chat that you could really do with, and it doesn't have to be neat and tidy like business planning, it could be more peer support, more access to like-minded people, cash. No, that's what everybody would put. But if there's something on that list, or rather not on that list, where you've thought, actually, I really need this right now. If you pop that, and you could do it privately as well, you don't have to have it all there for everyone to see. You can put that in the chat and we will digest this stuff. And we are producing a public facing document so that once we've analysed all of the different activities we're doing, we'll then put that out to the wider world so you can see what was said across the various communities that we've been talking to. So thank you for your time with that. Without further ado, Shelley, I hope that's okay. And I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks, Nicola. Morning, everyone. Do feel free to keep putting your responses into the chat because we're recording all of those as well. So, so the first part of this morning, we are going to be looking at your products and services and giving you a bit of space and time to think about what your products and services are and which ones you should be focusing your efforts on. You might be thinking, I don't have any products and services, but you'll see that we'll be considering potential ones as well. So things that you're already doing that you could potentially develop into products and services. Now this slide, some of you who came to Ellii Day 3 will recognise. We went through this in some detail. So any of you who weren't at that session, you can access that. We've got a recording of that, so you can access that and see a few of the case studies in a bit more detail. Now, what do we mean by products and services? So a product or a service is something that you sell. And the difference between a product and a product is usually a tangible thing. So it could be a mug. I haven't got my Flourish branded mug here today, but it could be a branded mug. It's a thing, and when you sell it, you transfer ownership to the person you've sold it to. So it's a one-off thing, and once you've sold it, it is theirs. Whereas a service is more of an ongoing thing. So again, it's usually less tangible. So it could be a subscription or a membership, but it's something that you're paying for on an ongoing basis, and there's no transferal of ownership in the process. So if you think about the difference between, say, buying a car or leasing a car, with music, back in the day, the only way you could get music was to buy a CD or a record, whereas now you can pay for a streaming service. So that's the difference between a product and a service. And you can kind of sell similar things in your skill set as a product or as a service, and there are pros and cons to each. So in a moment, we're going to ask you to consider what are your products and services, and what things do you do that could have the potential to become a product and a service that could generate income for you. So it could be that you run activities or programs, you could have courses, drop-in sessions, events, which might not currently generate income for your organisation, but we can start to think about whether something you already do could have this potential, and you could get them paid for either through trading or through commissioning. And we'll come on to that in a little bit more detail. But first of all, I'm going to give you a couple of case studies just to get the creative juices thinking. So on this slide, you can see the cookbook in the top right-hand corner. That's from an organisation called Bounce Back Food, who are based here in Manchester. Now, their mission is to fight food poverty. And they started out with a very simple proposition, which was buy one, donate one. So they'd sell a meal to an audience who could afford to pay for it. And within the income they made from that, they could then donate a meal to somebody who couldn't. So it's what Nicola calls the Robin Hood effect. So we're not literally stealing from the rich, but we're selling to them. And it means that we can offer our beneficiaries something at a low or no cost price point. Now, Bounce Back Food have been really, really entrepreneurial, and it's worth having a look at their website because they've got a whole host of different products and services now, just off the top of my head. So they run supper clubs. So, you know, they can organise events for you or your organisation. They have a catering service, a community cookbook, which is a way which has been created by the community, but it's a way of cooking for yourself, you know, at very, very low cost. They run cooking workshops to teach people how to cook for themselves. Again, you know, fighting food poverty by teaching people, giving people the skills to cook for themselves without spending loads of money. And then Bounce Back Food also have a sister organisation called Bounce Back Education, which is a completely separate business model. But again, it started off with the same proposition, which was buy one, donate one, and they offer it for education services, so tutoring. So people who can afford to pay to have their kids tutored would pay a little bit more in order to donate free tutoring to those who can't afford it. So really interesting mixed model there, so definitely worth a look at their website. Another organisation here is Me Again, which Nicola's very familiar with. And now they did things from a slightly different perspective. So they started out as a hairdresser and a beauty therapist. So they were more of a conventional business when they started out. And then they saw that there was a real need for women who were experiencing cancer to have specific tailored beauty and wellbeing services. So they started to develop their offer in that area. And now they have contracts with the NHS to create and sell wigs. But again, they've got this mixed model where they charge people who can afford it a fee, but they can also offer their beneficiaries who may not be able to afford it free offers, whether it's wellbeing workshops or wigs, you know, specific things tailored to women who are experiencing cancer. Another organisation, this is one that I've worked with, Barnaby Festival. You can see the balloons in the bottom right-hand corner. Now, that was a community arts festival, and the mission was very much to extend the arts and offer the arts to all communities, not just to middle-class people. And so most of the things that we offered were free or very low cost. So a few things might have been pitched at about £1 for a workshop, say, but most things were free. And then we supplemented that with some kind of big events with sort of headlining acts, pop groups that people would have heard of. And we had, you know, big events that would generate money, which meant that we could then supplement the freebies elsewhere in the festival. So again, you've got this mixed model. Now, it's worth bearing in mind when thinking about your products and services that some things actually take more effort than they're worth. And you probably won't, because you're all an entrepreneurial bunch, you won't have a shortage of ideas. So it's really important to cost these things out. And I think you'll see lots of people do go down the route of creating branded products, making badges, in the hope that their community will buy them. But it's really, really important to cost out not just how much it's going to cost you to create these things and how many you need to sell in order to break even, but just how much of your time it's going to take, because these things can be quite time consuming. And even if you're giving your time for free, or if you've got some volunteers who are giving their time for free, it's important that you realise that's time that's not being spent on something else. So just to factor that in. And quite often you can do kind of low risk tests. Just try something out, see what sort of demand there is before you order a massive run of something and suddenly find that you've got a garage full of mugs that you're trying to shift.
Like me. No, they're pretty much all gone, to be fair, but and that was a fundraiser, but we would never start flogging mugs to people because it's another job in itself, and one that we've not got a sales and marketing team for.
And in an ideal world, so the sweet spot is a product or a service which directly meets your goals, which achieves your mission, but also generates income or has potential to generate income in the future. So it might be something, and we'll come on to this in a moment, that you're trying out and you feel that it's got the potential in the future. If it's something completely separate that isn't aligned to any of your goals, then it could potentially be a bit of a distraction. Sometimes it might be that something's an awareness raiser, and we'll talk a bit about that in a moment. And that's great if you're sure that that awareness is converting either to extending your reach or to more paying customers further down the line, because awareness for the sake of awareness isn't actually necessarily beneficial for your organisation. Can we just move on to the next slide, please? Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. There we go.
So again, this is a slide that those of you who are here for Ellii Day 3 will recognise. And we talked through, and again, I'd recommend you go back and have a look at this if you've not seen it already. We talked through in some detail different income generation strategies, and I'll just touch on these. And what I'd like you to do as I talk through these is just scribble down whether you have any existing or potential products and services in any of the 4 boxes. So trading is very straightforward. Trading is selling people stuff. You're selling it directly to the consumer. So it might be that you're selling a workshop or an event. You might have somebody paying for a product that you've created. So do you have anything in your current business model mix, or is this something you're considering? I know that some people here are thinking about trading things. So if you could note down existing and potential products and services that you're currently trading. It might be that you're doing an activity already, but it's not something that you are selling directly to people, but it could potentially have potential. I'll just give you a moment or two to write them down. And if anyone wants to just share anything that they're currently trading, that would be really useful to give people ideas, the sorts of things that you can sell. Everyone's too busy writing down.
Today's a bit different. We're trying to get people to think differently about what they do, and this might feel a bit weird or a bit uncomfortable. If you're thinking, oh, if you're struggling to think about this, don't worry, there's plenty of time. There's time for more questions and it will percolate through, but we're just wanting you to look at your activities in a different language, I guess. And I think once we come on to the group sessions as well, you'll hear some of the things that other people are doing, and that might spark some ideas for things that you could apply to your organisation too.
So Shirley, I don't know if this counts, but I in trading, I would say I sell my time. So I do invigilation and some other casual work at a school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'm using that money to support what my project.
Yeah, and is it so? Yeah, absolutely. So if that's something that you're doing, I mean, you're selling your time in order to create income to support your project, absolutely. And sometimes what people find is really useful is they can start to offer consultancy. So the project that you're doing is making you an expert in all sorts of different things, and at some point you can start selling that expertise. So it might be that you could be talking to other people who are setting up similar organizations, or it might be the core. So whether you're so for example, an organisation that's offering counselling or support services, not only could they offer the counselling and support services to their beneficiary group, they could consider offering them to paying clients elsewhere as well. But they could also offer some consultancy, so whether it's in the form of online workshops or one-to-one mentoring to people who are interested in developing those sorts of services. So all those things you do are making you an expert in that area, and you'll have all these strands to your bow, which you may or may not have thought about how to monetize yet. Okay, so if we just move briefly on to commissioning. Now this could be, generally commissioning is done in advance, and somebody will either put out a tender, or you'll come to an agreement with a commissioning body to deliver a number of services. And generally it's done in advance, and it's usually done in bulk. So it might be that there's a health body or an education body, or a local council might commission you to deliver something. So in support of dealing with loneliness in the community, offering support and wellbeing services. So these are normally done in bulk. And this kind of links us into fundraising, funding, which is at the bottom right-hand corner. So although you might not be being commissioned at the moment, if you think about the way in which your projects benefit the community, are there any commissioning bodies out there who are interested in benefiting the community in that way? So, for example, if I go back to the loneliness example, lots of healthcare bodies are interested in reducing loneliness in the community because it relieves pressure on local doctors' services, because lots of lonely people access doctors' services because they're lonely. So if you can alleviate the loneliness in the community and make a case for how you're doing so, then they could be interested in commissioning your services to reduce pressure over here. So if you think about all the benefits that your organisation has for your community, there might be some aligned commissioning bodies who could potentially take them on in the future. And that comes on to funding. So I'm sure many of us here have been successful in securing some funding for developing new products, developing new services or products. And what funding bodies are often really interested in pilots. And it's not just because they're only interested in things at the beginning of their life cycle, but a pilot has the potential to become a sustainable product or service. So when you're doing your projects, your funded projects, it's really important to think about it strategically. So to think about, how could this be a piece of research and development for something in the future? How would I need to evaluate this to prove that this is something that is beneficial and useful and potentially sustainable, in order that then you don't need to secure funding for the second time that you do the project or further down the line? Now, it's also a really good opportunity to start to develop partnerships with those potential future commissioners. So as you're developing your pilots, think about how you might bring those people in, how you might involve them, whether it's in the development or the evaluation of your project, with a view to developing that income stream a bit further down the line. And then again with fundraising, so this also has the opportunity to become a field in which to do research and development for new products and services. So instead of thinking of things on a project basis, you're starting to think about the pipeline. So how is what I'm doing now? So the thing that I've crowdfunded for, it might be that you've done an event, or you've created a magazine, or something that you're seeing as a one-off project. And then instead of thinking, right, where do I get funding for next time? You've started to use that as research and development to evidence the value of what it is that you're doing.
I could give a quick example there, Shelley, if it's helpful. I know you've probably got others, but if you think back, anyone that's known us for a long time, or even if you haven't, when we were the Women Supporting Social Entrepreneurs Network, we did our first crowdfund campaign, and we've done 4 of those now. And originally our mentorathon that some of you have experienced, and that we now build into programs. So when we seek a funded piece of work or a contract, or people have come to us to fund this program, like, you know, the WEA or NatWest or Manchester City Council, for example, we build that in now. I've not had to crowdfund for that for 4 or 5 years, thank God. But you know, we use that experience to test something out, and then when we saw it had legs, we were able to build it into other options. And I've now got, for example, there's an organisation funded through Transport for Greater Manchester, where we built that into a project that they want us to deliver. So all of these, even when you're testing things, or you're not quite sure if this is something you're going to repeat, it's research and development for new products and services, and people don't always think of it in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And the relationship, you know, it's such a great opportunity to reach out, whether it's to your local council or somebody that you are interested in partnering or taking commissions from in the future, and just try and bring them in, you know, bring them into the project that you're working on, see if you can involve them. They'll see how you operate, and they're, you know, much more likely to want to work with you in the future. An organisation I worked with years ago in London called Bikeworks, Now, they work with lots of different beneficiary groups, but one of them was people who were experiencing homelessness or long-term unemployed people. And they piloted 2 projects. One was to upskill people to repair bikes and service bikes. And the other one was to upskill them to deliver bikeability courses. That's your kind of cycling proficiency courses. So they did the pilots, they involved the local councils, and following those, they got service level agreements from a number of councils across London. And it just became this really, really virtuous circle where they could bring people in, train them up, then provide them with employment, and then deliver these service level agreements to the local councils. And then also alongside this, the people they were training up to repair and service bicycles could come and work in their workshop. So then they could expand their offer and offer bike repairs and bike servicing to more people in the local area, whilst giving people jobs. So it's that kind of strategic thinking about the projects that you're doing and thinking about how these can become longer term products and services with a bit of a pipeline.
And sometimes that product or service, you might think, oh, I don't know if I can fit that in on top of everything we do, or, oh, I'm not sure this is for us, or I haven't got the skills or the expertise. But you can get people to help you to think that through. Or if a lot of you are working with highly capable women and highly capable communities, they just happen to have faced setbacks, you're working with them to help with their progress. So there's potential for your communities to take these projects on and run with them. For example, I know when we've done work with Ellii in the past, they were actively looking into setting up a catering business called Zesty, and they knew a lot of the women in their community could cook amazing food, and they wanted to empower their community to set up their own social enterprise. And don't get me wrong, these things can take a while to come to fruition. And I know they had some setbacks through COVID, and I think that project has gone on a back burner, but they, through getting funding or creating the time to think through with their women, what skills have you got, what could we create, what could we do, and for them to lead it, take it off your shoulders a little bit, or a member of your board might be tasked with overseeing or supporting a group to look at these enterprise projects, or you might buy in people like Flourish or whoever else to facilitate this stuff. If you haven't got the time, then we can help people think all of that through. And I recall, when Zesty were up and running and piloting, really, we brought in some amazing biryani for one of our mentorathons. So there are people up there who'll want to buy things. It's just having the time to think and having the resources to take that next step. And ultimately, Ellii provides what it provides for women as a women's support organisation in crisis. And any catering business is a new business model and a new business plan in addition to their core work. And Shelley will look at some of this stuff with you shortly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also a bit of a mindset shift. And again, this applies to the example you've just given, Nicola, but also the Bikeworks example, where your beneficiaries become an asset. They become a resource because they're upskilled and they're trained, and they then become part of your team. And that's a fantastic situation to be in, where you're benefiting people, but also they are part of the organisation, and they're adding to its strength.
Yeah. And we're all of us, I think we recognised on that day where we were looking at problem trees and, what's the core issue we're trying to solve. A lot of us are trying to tackle and support the economic, independence of women and of communities, and, creating these enterprise projects or initiatives that others can run with, or that creates new jobs and options for people inside or outside of your organisation. It's got to be a good thing from our perspective. And I guess that's why we're sowing that seed.
Yeah,
it's not easy, and it's a long game sometimes, but it can.
I think the point you made earlier, Nicola, was really, really interesting. Just thinking, because we are social enterprises or charities or community groups, we have the opportunity to secure funding to develop these pilot projects, which people in the business world don't have the opportunity for. So it's
not at the same level sometimes, do you?
No, not in the same way that you can have a piece of basically seed funding that you don't have to pay back. So it's how can you make the most of that piece of funding that you've got in order to develop the long term, rather
than a one-off or another project or something that might drop off a cliff if it can't be sustained and that kind of thing.
So if we just move on to the next slide, please. Okay. Yeah. So we'd now like you to have a bit of
last thing we're asking you to do, and then you get to talk to each other.
But all the stuff that you're noting down already will feed into the conversation we're about to have in breakout groups. So we want you to just take 5 minutes or so to consider the products and services that you've written down, and then just drop them into these boxes. So as I said earlier, a product is something that's tangible. It's a physical thing that you buy and then you own, whereas a service is an ongoing thing. So there are some examples here. So you should be able to see quite clearly whether what you're doing is a thing or it's an ongoing service. And we want you to think about what is core. I talked a bit earlier about the sweet spot, and the sweet spot is something that is fully aligned to your mission. You know, it's delivering your outcomes that you are trying to achieve. Ideally, it's been tried and tested, you know it works, and you can repeat it. So you're not having to tailor it each time that you provide this particular thing. Ideally, you want it to be either funded or paid for in a sustainable way. So it's generating a surplus for your organisation. Then second to that, there's a box for what's additional. So these might be things that are more reactive or reactionary. So they're an added extra. So they're not so core in that they might not directly deliver what it is that your mission is trying to achieve, but that's not to say that it's not an important part of the mix. So for example, even we talk about the different audiences. It might be that you're offering a service to some paying customers which aren't delivering your mission, but indirectly they are, because it's providing the unrestricted funding that you can then use to develop your organisation. Or it could be something that's a loss leader. So it might be something that you do at a loss in the short term because you have a plan for translating this into something sustainable further down the line. Or it might be something that's costing you money, but you know if you can use it to raise awareness, for example, could be a fundraising project. If you know that that awareness will translate into better partnerships, improved reputation, accessing potential service users, then it's still fulfilling a function and it's still a useful part of the mix. And then anything else, so anything that doesn't really fit into core or additional or new things that you're considering. So they might just be the seed of an idea or something that you've just started to pilot and test. And I think with these things, often we don't know what's going to be effective until we've tried it, and that's why we pilot and test these things. So anything that you've got there, pop in those in that box. And I'll give you just a minute or two to jot them down. If you've got any questions, just come off mute or pop them in the chat if anything's not clear.
A lot to think about on a Wednesday morning. It's a good job we're not doing this on a Monday.
I always like this aspect of it though, because it's the creative side. I like the dreaming up ideas bit of it.
Yeah, and sometimes you can spot things that you hadn't realised, because you'd never really sit and think about this stuff. Yeah. I remember when I first started using this language, I was working for Bubble Enterprises years ago. They're a consultancy ultimately that helps develop health and wellbeing enterprises, and they do it in many different ways. And we were setting up social enterprise cafes, for example, the cafe that's in Stepping Hill Hospital, the Oasis Cafe. It's and there were multiple. We were trying to set up others, and it wasn't until we started looking at what is the core service of this cafe and what is additional. Or we developed the cafe in Levenshulme Inspire. They were part of that project team, and again working through what is key to what we're doing and what might be additional. So the key things were we were selling food through the cafe, and we were tea, coffee, and events were core. But then additional was we were then building an additional catering service, and we were then putting on additional bespoke events to bring people in, and we were looking at the things like the developing the cookbook or the developing this, what else came in later. And what you find is you can get that busy developing the what else and moving into the next thing that you don't fully focus on what's core. You've got to have what's core in order, and it's got to be repeatable, fundable, or there's got to be people to pay for it. And sometimes we don't spend enough time looking at our core and really strengthening it. Sounds a bit like yoga, doesn't it? But if you don't strengthen your core, the rest of it falls over.
Well, that's your bread and butter, isn't it? And You know, it's like that thing with
You can't
marketing.
innovate, you know, you can't have fun innovating all the other stuff if the core stuff's not, washing
But
it.
with marketing, there's an adage, and it varies depending on who you're talking to, but the cost of retaining an existing customer is about 1/10 of the cost of bringing in someone new. So looking after your core, it's the same thing. Looking after what is established and what is working and what is good is the priority, and then the innovations can come on top of that. And I think also connected to that, there's the triple time, budget, quality. There's the holy trinity. And unless you can increase your resources, if you increase the number of things that you're offering, one of those things has to change. So either the quality of what you're offering goes down, or you need more time to deliver it, or you need more budget to deliver it. You can't just keep adding an infinite number of things to a finite organisation size.
Just so you know, Shelley, I have set up some breakout rooms. So when you're ready.
Fantastic. Right, so yeah, should we move on to the next slide? I'll just do a quick brief on what we're going to do. So in front of you, you should have your products and services, existing and potential, all written down, and starting to map them out into different areas so you can think about priorities, where you could be focusing your efforts. And we'll put these questions into the chat as well. But we're going to put you into groups of, is it 3, Michaela?
Yeah, 3 or 4 per group. I'm going to just create 4 breakouts. So we'll see. I might shuffle. I'm going to create them. Will that invite people in? I can't remember.
Not until you open the rooms.
Oh, fine, that's all right.
So yeah, so if you could share with your group, what are your products and services? And within that, you might explain whether they're currently bringing in any income for you, or if it's something that you're running free of charge. Have you got ideas that are still in development, things on the back burner you haven't considered, you haven't piloted or tested? And then, do you feel that you've got the right balance between what you're doing for free and what you're generating a sustainable income from? And is the stuff that you're doing for free, has this got potential to generate income from? Does anyone have any examples? And we'd love to hear these, because these are really good models for other people to apply to their organisation. So where you've applied for funding or done fundraising to pilot an idea, which you then could charge for once you'd evaluated it and worked out that it works, or run on a repeatable basis. Do you have any products and services that you could sell to new audiences? So this is the Robin Hood idea, so that some people you're giving it to for free, but other audiences you're charging. Anything you're already doing, because the things that you don't have to reinvent, they're going to be the most time effective in terms of bringing to market. And where do you need support in your thinking and planning? And again, this is something that we really find useful. We'd like to hear back from you as an organisation. What would be helpful in terms of moving you forward in developing your products and services? So I will copy these over and pop them into a chat. And we're going to give you, how long have we got, Michaela?
We've got about 15-20 minutes. You've either got 2 or 3 in your breakouts as it's full, and we've got, let's say, we'll try and give you 20 minutes, and then we'll come back for just 5 minutes having a look at any reflections before the break. Does that sound okay? So I'm going to open all rooms. I think they should work. I think that should be all right. And we'll look forward to seeing you
in about 15 minutes.
Yes. So I think we're just in the middle of coming back from our breakout groups, where we've been talking about products and services, or trying to think about the activities that we run and categorize them into whether they're products and services, and think about how the income for those things is coming currently, how it might come in the future. Sifting things through is like, what's priority 1, what's core, and what might be added extras that we've ended up creating as additional knee-jerk things, or because of a funder, or because they've spotted an opportunity, or somebody's come asking for something else. And then before the break here, Shelley's just going to see what you discussed, if we can get some highlights and conversations. So
yeah, absolutely. So it'd be great to hear from, if we start with room 2, did you identify your core products and services, your bread and butter? Do you feel you've got the right balance? any examples that are really good where people have piloted something and then gone on to turn it into a tradable or commissionable entity. Anything that you're doing already that you could consider packaging up and selling to different audiences. So yeah, should we start with room 2?
Oh, was I in room 2? I can't remember what room I was in.
Oh, I don't know, Jenny, but let's start with your room.
Who knows? Have I still got the list? Let's have a look.
We can start with you, Jenny.
I think we were, Jenny.
Were we? Okay.
You were
so.
room 2, well remembered, yes.
Well done, Dee. I just want to say that I've had the most fantastic conversation with 2 other brilliant women. One, Dee, who I've met before a few times, and I have the utmost admiration for what she does. But we've just had the most fantastic conversation with Samira, who I've seen at a distance in another breakout room, but never had the pleasure of talking with her. And you know what? Is a wonderful, wonderful person.
Totally.
That's it. That's all I've got to say.
Oh, well, we'd love to hear what you chatted about. Did you get to any interesting conclusions?
Absolutely.
On your products and services?
Yeah, we chatted about what we were delivering now, what we were hoping to deliver in the future. You know, Dee share, because I've known Dee for a few weeks now. Met at the Frog and Buckets, when the last one that you had there, and then we met each other a few times now. Dee was sharing some amazing positive outcomes that she's had from some of her opportunities and workshops, and the products and services that Samira's got in the pipeline. I think will leave us all wishing that we could think of as interesting and groundbreaking services as she's potentially got. Samira needs to tell everybody what she does, I think.
Yeah, Samira, we'd
just all help her push forward.
Yeah, would you like to come off mute and tell us about some of your great ideas? Because I've heard a couple of them. You've got lots.
That's very kind, Jenny, what you said. So I use the word visual difference because legally my sight is considered as blind. But then I've tried to use that as an opportunity to slow down and look at the stuff that I can't see. So that's to do with art and being creative and using the creative stuff to make products to sell, to fund the other stuff that I want to do. For example, workshops for people that might be visually impaired or still isolated for whatever reason, when there's this drive back to normality. And also, like, because I've got a lot of experience with training and coordinating and managing volunteers, so thinking about helping people set up schemes like that.
Absolutely. You're already doing the thing that I touched on earlier, which was about thinking about where your expertise is. And you've got loads of areas where you have fantastic skills, experience and expertise. And you're thinking about how you can turn that into something that you could sell, that you could trade.
It's just a coincidence that because I'm reaching the end of my degree, you get asked what else have you done? What have you published? So it's just by coincidence that I started writing down that stuff before I knew we were going to do this exercise.
Oh, brilliant.
Samira, tell people about your photographs on Twitter so everybody can follow you.
So I'll just say the story really briefly. So I once got told, "Oh, why do you want to take pictures? You can't see, they'll be blurry, they'll be horrible. Don't take pictures." And I'm like, I will take pictures. So I put some of them on Twitter, not so much recently because I made a conscious choice to take a break since the New Year's. But luckily I have helpers to help me when I really want to say something. So one of my favorite pictures I took is a sunset, and it looks like if you've ever had a rainbow cake and you cut into it.
Wow.
So my Twitter handle's Samara K for Kick Naseem. No, but Kick, this is just K, Samara K Naseem.
Wow.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Samira.
We'll put any links in the chat by all means.
Absolutely. Yeah, if we can hear any reflections from another group, what did you uncover in that discussion? Did it shed any new light on what you're doing or what you'd like to do going forward? I'll say group 3, but I'm not sure if anyone knows what room they're in. Does anyone know who's in room 3?
That might.
Oh, Alice, sorry.
That might have been me and Tina. I'm not really sure. We actually were talking a lot about how we find it difficult to justify our own funding for our services that we're delivering. So not wanting to take away from the beneficiaries that we're working with, finding it perhaps difficult to emotionally and mentally justify recompense for our input onto things. So we're both delivering services to people and we would never charge them for it because they are beneficiaries on very, very low incomes. And also the fact that those services should be commissioned because of the money that we're saving to other services. And perhaps I think at the moment it's we don't know how do you do that?
How you lobby for that, how you build the right relationships, how you set out your stall, and how you measure impact to feed into all of that. But
it's having all that information and that package of stuff that could go. Like at the moment, I've got funding to do a group for women experiencing homelessness. I'm going into a provision to deliver it, which is benefiting the people operating the provision and the people who are attending. But the people operating the provision aren't having to fork out anything for it because somebody else has funded it. I'm delivering it. They're just getting some
signposting people across.
Yeah. And how do I go from I've run this, I can show you all the data for it. Now pay me for it. And yeah.
And it takes time, and sometimes it's a case of working out. You can pull all of that together, but you might be barking up the wrong tree. Are these people ever going to be convinced that or you can help write their bids with them and for them and build you in? Sometimes it's what's the shift got to look like to get them to pay you, and there's about 4 or 5 possible shifts, and there's also the mindset of the person in charge. And so, well, we gladly. One of the reasons I was just saying before with the lady that joined in the breakouts was helping think all of this through now before we start to introduce some coaching or enterprise coaching support with people will help clarify what you want to talk about with somebody else who can help kind of help you piece certain parts together. We're hoping from February onwards we'll be able to offer some coaching support to some of the people on the programme, and what you've just described there, Alice, is a perfect conundrum to work through with the coach.
Thanks, Alice.
Yeah, I think we were it's the fact that if you start focusing on sort of offering too much, it's very easy to burn out.
Yes.
And trying to sort of over diversify or make yourself sound like a project that's got sort of tons and tons of stuff to offer, so it can sometimes dissipate your core focus and move you away from your vision and mission, and that can be quite a negative thing. And sometimes it is about regrouping and coming back and going like, what do I actually really want to achieve with this? Absolutely. Where's my time best focused?
And hopefully this kind of exercise helps whether people have got loads of those projecty bits. If you see they're all sat in the additional or they're all sat in the not funded yet, then it can help you have a bit of a reality check on perhaps where you need to be looking. Sorry, Shelley.
Not at all. Thanks, Alice. I think they're really valid points that a lot of people will be able to relate to. Chinna, did you have something to say?
Yes, thank you, Shelley. We had actually very interesting conversation. Our team, Soul Sisters and Women Arise Group. So Asma and Atika. I'm sorry if Atika, if I'm pronouncing wrong, but like we all discussed what services we have and the products and if we get in funding for it or not, and I think and also we learned how to kind of like collaborate and work together. because, for example, Asma, she said she was in a podcast radio this morning, and so we thought it's her podcast, and she said no, she was in a. So she's got trained and she's got the qualification. She can teach us actually how to for us also to be able to do some podcasts for our like groups. For example, for myself, it will be good like for our women in the refugees women to kind of like listen to their stories and how they came here and a bit of like their journey. And we will be able to educate people of what we are doing and of the whole their idea about the reality, what's going beyond the scene. So I think for me, it was very good to learn that. And also she said they're going to have something in November in museum in Rochdale, kind of like art and music and art. So it will be good also for us because we are doing art and music and sharing culture and art. So it will be something else for us to work together, and maybe in the future to be able to do it, to bring it to Stockport. And the same with Tika also. She's doing things differently, and I think it's good for me to see all of them like through they're organized and they know what they're doing, and we can learn a lot from each other. So I think it was very interesting.
Thanks, Jenna.
Yeah, thank you.
That's really good to hear. Thank you. I think, we've got a note from Asma as well, which I think is relevant to what we were just talking about. Bear with me. Yeah, creating income from our expertise. Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got one group to hear from still. Who is in that final group? Just trying to think who we've not heard from. Is it Jean maybe? And Gloria? You've both gone off camera. Would either of you just like to say a word or two about?
Might be in the middle of coming on, but I joined that group very briefly, and it was great because they were showing each other images of each other's products and artwork and things that we do.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, Jean, I see you've just, oh no, I was going to say you've come off mute.
Hi everyone, I'll just say a little bit.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we were just looking at Mary's, some of what Mary was talking about was very interesting because she's shipping a lot of products abroad, and she's managed to get some funding for free, which is amazing. And the stuff that she's sending over there, it seems to be pretty much self-funded. So that's what I think the theme with most of us, that we're trying to fund our own stuff at the moment. And I think the reason why, because we're trying to hold it to heart at the moment before, well, that's personally to me, before I put it out there. And I'm still in construction stage, so the production and the core and everything is just still in foundation really. So I'll leave Gloria to speak if she's got anything to say, or any other one. Yeah.
So we share different things we do. So Jen says she do personal development. She help people to be themselves. I think it's like empowering people. And Mary talk about a charity. She help family who have disabled children. And I deliver some workshop now, and I get paid for it. So how to develop again what I'm doing, to try to mix art and therapy, like massage therapy. So I want to do. Yeah, so we exchange different things we're doing.
And I remember us speaking a while ago, Gloria, and I've not forgotten, I came to an exhibition that was run, a lady called Beth Powell, Creative City Manchester. Gloria's worked alongside her before. They had this fantastic exhibition, and some of your print work and artwork, sometimes people are producing things, but they haven't necessarily asked the wider world, would you buy this? how would you apply this? How would you use this? And I saw Gloria's prints on the wall, very striking, bold colours, and they'd be perfect for the front covers of some of our reports that we write. So sometimes there are audiences out there. I will buy imagery from Gloria when I next need it on the front cover of a shiny report, because it'll bring that boring report to life. And so some of you are doing things where you've not thought, oh, who might buy this? And how might I apply this? And, you know, it's just another example of what's out there. I think Mary was off mute, and I didn't know if Mary was going to be adding a last bit before we break for a little break. Or I'm not sure. Oh, no.
Everyone, yeah.
Oh, there you are.
Yes, so it's just a pleasure that and a privilege for us to be in this program. Networking is one big one that I've always wanted to, because it can be very lonely at the top, but meeting women that, you know, that things alike is a great privilege for us. Yeah, so we will be collaborating with Gloria, of course, very soon. So yeah, and thank you again.
Thanks, Mary. And that's a really good point about, I think part of a big part of the value of programs like this are connecting with other women who are either running similar enterprises or in a similar sector. So I'll pop in the chat. We've got the directory started in which you can put your organisation's details. We're about to take a break. We're going to have 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes. I know we've run over a little bit, but we'll catch up. So
I'll pop it in the chat. I'll pop it in the chat now, and if you find a moment today just to start to fill in your details, it's great, because then it means the other women who are in the Ellii group, and there's about 30 organisations involved, and hopefully we'll get that directory complete, and it means that you can contact each other directly. But yeah, so we'll take a break now and come back at about 11:40.